First of all, I want to thank Shraddha and YourStory for providing this amazing platform for us to learn, come together. And I think the keyword spark in TechSpark is really important because we want to be here to get inspired about something new. So the topic that I'm going to talk about today is the transformation that's going on in the SaaS industry. So I've been very fortunate to be part of the SaaS industry for a few years now. And there's an interesting sort of shift in the SaaS industry that's going on. How many of you are building for B2B here? B2C? Fewer hands than B2B, interesting. So the transformation that the SaaS industry is going through right now, and you'll see a lot of companies announce it, is that for the first time, machine learning, deep learning, and data science are being incorporated into SaaS technologies to provide intelligence to the customer base, right? So that's really my topic of discussion today, is how artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning are going to impact SaaS businesses. So the myth is you look at all these movies and machines are going to take over and they're going to rule us. And then the reality is we're very far away from it. So I want to separate sort of the hype from reality. Reality is we're very, very far away from achieving sort of peak AI. So how many of you know John McCarthy? John McCarthy is regarded as the father of AI. And what he's trying to say here, in 1958, he theorized that as humans, our ultimate objective is to create programs that learn from experiences, right? So what makes us human is this innate ability that we can learn from our experiences. So we don't repeat the same mistakes again and again, right? Whereas a computer is programmed to do things a certain way, and it cannot learn from its experiences. It still doesn't have the cognition to understand what's good and what's bad. Just a few months ago, Microsoft released its AI bot called Tay on Twitter. It was a female bot that you could interact with, and you could ask it questions in Twitter and respond back to you, right? In 2 weeks, they had to pull the bot down because in 2 weeks, internet trolls had gotten to the bot and trained it to be a pseudo-Nazi, weed-smoking, bot that would basically just, respond in certain ways, right? And it didn't have the cognitive function to respond like a human, to discern what is good and what's bad. So really what we're trying to do with AI is we're trying to take this thing that we have in our heads, called the brain, right, which has this innate ability to learn, and put it into a computer so the computer can have that ability to learn. And if you really look at the history and all the work that's gone on in AI, AI as a field of study has been around since 1950s, right? As a concept, it's probably been around for much longer. I was reading some history and it dates back to Aristotle, right? But as a concept. But in reality, as a field of study or as science, it has existed since 1950s. And really the first generation of AI started with Alan Turing, defining the Turing test. And there was a lot of game AI. So, DeepMind trying to beat, or Deep Blue trying to beat, Gary Kasparov is not new. This was attempted in 1950 by computer programmers, right, who tried to build, AI technology that could beat somebody in chess. So that's been around since the 1950s. Then there was the golden era of AI. So once people looked at AI as this thing that's so powerful, government started to pump in a lot of money. DARPA, which is the big research organization the defense research organization in the US, NSF, they funded a whole bunch of university initiatives around AI. And then you see sort of a lot of progress being made between 1950s and mid-1970s when, you might have heard of neural networks and expert systems. That was the era when all of that stuff was built, right? And the rocky road, so then, it was very hyped technology. It's kind of like the e-commerce story in India, right? It goes through a cycle of hype, and then, reality sets in. So that was the reality period between 1974 and 2001 when people realized that we're way ahead of ourselves. And AI, there's more work to be done for AI to become real, right? So, really, what was the challenge there, right? Why did AI not take off? It was almost, 40, 50 years. Why did AI not take off? because if you really look at what has changed now and why AI is possible and why AI was not possible then, is that data did not exist. For AI to work, you need large volumes of data, right? And in that era, there was not a lot of data. I mean, a lot of things were still on paper, things had not gotten into a computer yet, and large data sets were not available. So data was very sparse. And in sparse data, you really can't do a lot of AI, right? And so all of the techniques around AI were built around having very sparse data. And that's why you see things like neural networks or deduction type AI problems being solved. And now what has happened is since 2001, there's an explosion of data. We have more data than we know what to do with, right? And that's why you look at Bangalore, the hottest job possibly in Bangalore today is a data scientist, right? Simply because we have more data than we know what to do with. And when that level of data is available, then it accelerates sort of how AI will work. But the most interesting thing is the techniques have changed, right? So all the techniques for AI in the past were built on very sparse data. And now that we have so much data, we're talking about machine learning. We're talking about deep learning, right? And machine learning and deep learning are techniques where we look at a lot of data and we're able to make predictions, right? So that is the big change, and that's why I call it the intelligence era. Now let's look at enterprise computing. What has happened in enterprise computing over this time, right? So pre-1960s, all of the information in the enterprise was on paper, right? They didn't even have computers back then. Then computers came into the enterprise, and data started to move into databases, right? So 1960s to 1980 or so, all we were doing was digitization. We were taking things that were stored in paper and putting it into a database. Once that was done, between 1980s and 2000, we started to see things called workflows, right? So suddenly you have data in databases. Teams that were owners of this data could collaborate with each other, right? And so workflows emerged. And once these workflows emerged, the next step was, how do we actually automate some of these things and get rid of some humans along the way, right? So automation happened in the early 2000s all the way through now. Now I think we are in the intelligence era where the software, the enterprise software, is smart enough with all the data, it can make recommendations to the employee, right? That, hey, maybe you want to do this or maybe you want to do that. And then the future is autonomous. The way I see it is everything is going to be autonomous. We're building cars to be autonomous where you don't need a driver anymore, right? And so enterprise apps theoretically could be autonomous, right? This is research from like a research firm. I won't believe it. I'll take the number and slash it by half, right? But it's a pretty big opportunity. If we as an industry came together and focused on this, the entire enterprise software market is a $300 billion market per year. Out of that, if let's say the market grows by another 100 billion because of AI, that's a market we all can participate in as entrepreneurs, right? And that's the main reason why I'm here talking to you about what's going on here. So here's the do part, right? Okay, I've talked to you a little bit about what's AI, what's the lay of the land. What can we do? So the first thing that we need to, if you look at AI, it's going to develop slowly, and how it's going to be brought into sort of our technology is a very slow, natural progression. Facebook got ahead of themselves. 6 months ago, they went and declared that chatbots are going to rule the world, and declared chatbots for Messenger and all kinds of things, APIs. 6 months later, they've had to retrench from that position. David Marcus went up at TechCrunch recently and said, oh yeah, we got ahead of ourselves, right? So yeah, they did get ahead of themselves. The way AI is going to evolve is, the way I believe it's going to evolve, is simple intelligent notifications, right? This is non-intrusive. Let's say you're an employee, you're working on some sort of HR system. You have set up an interview with a candidate, right? And suddenly, 10 minutes before that interview starts, you are sent a notification with a full profile of the candidate, that it has not just garnered that profile from LinkedIn, but from various sources. That's intelligent notification. So that's very simple AI. It's doable. You can take any enterprise software and do simple sort of intelligent notifications. That adds a lot of value. The second thing that I see, the way it's going to evolve, is suggestions, right? So you're using sort of an enterprise product, let's say accounting, CRM, and suddenly you get suggestions, right? CRM is a very good example. You're a customer service agent. You're trying to help a customer. The customer sent you a query, And the system can suggest 3 possible responses to send to that particular agent, right? That's the suggestion. So basically, the machine is sort of looking at interactions coming in from customers. It has a history of all the interactions in the past with all the other customers. So it's able to suggest to the person as to what action they need to take. Super powerful and useful. From suggestions, what we're going to do is we're basically going to move into the territory of predictions, right? So predictions are used a lot in certain industries already. For example, a lot of the financial services industry relies on predictions, right? If you look at all of the automated trading that goes on, it's basically built on the prediction models, right? In healthcare, a lot of things that we do are built on predictions. And all of this could come into enterprise software as well, right? For example, if you can give a CFO a warning that you're going to miss a quarter well before that event has happened, just because you're observing some patterns in the software, there's a lot of value you've provided, right? So that's the nature of predictions. And the last one I think is very powerful. This is where Facebook got very ahead of themselves, because they took this 4th step and made it the 1st step, which is conversations, right? So conversations are very interesting, where either an employee or a customer of a brand or a company can talk to the company, and instead of talking to a human, there's actually a bot or some technology that's responding to them, right? And you can apply this in any area. So let's say that you're an employee and you want to find out what benefits you have. You can go talk to your HR person, and they can point you to some document online. Or you can talk to a bot on Slack, and it'll just point you to that link because it understands you, right? That's conversational. Same thing on the customer service standpoint. Like, customer wants to buy a product, they come to the website or to a mobile app, and they open up and they have a question about the product, right? And instead of relying on a human, basically the bot can answer that, right? So that's the conversational piece. And this, I think, is sort of the pinnacle of where enterprise software will ultimately get to in AI, because here you're starting to actually replace humans with technology, right? And that's the ultimate sort of realization of AI. So with that said, I think I'm pretty much done with my presentation. And John McCarthy, I'm going to end with a quote of John McCarthy. In 1950s, he was very excited. He was very young, and he made this huge prediction about AI. In 1995, towards his sort of later stage in his life, he said, if you want to do good work, work on the technology, not on getting power, right? And that's very, very important when you start talking about AI. When people talk about any technology, I think a lot of people were invested in AI. The reason the defense departments in the US were interested in AI was that it's such a powerful technology, right? You can create robots that theoretically can go around and do a lot of things. And so, the motivation was wrong, right? The motivation was about power. Whereas, we as technologists need to realize that there's so much intrinsic business value in creating something like this, that we should look at the good side of applying this technology. It's kind of like nuclear technology. You can use it to generate electricity, or you can use it to create bomb, right? So it's up to us to figure out how we're going to apply this technology.
What I see is that technology is going to make financial transactions and interaction with financial transactions very convenient. They will make it very, very easy, and they will overall reduce the cost of doing transactions. So hopefully all of that benefits the entire ecosystem in terms of more efficient and more convenient for consumers.
Amount of capital that has gone into the ecosystem has fundamentally changed, right? I mean, the amount of billion-dollar rounds we've seen, and including into companies such as ours, has been phenomenal.